Hi everyone, welcome to Abby Research Reads. I'm Dr. Kristen, and today I am talking about the book Kids These Days by Malcolm Harris, which is a real depressing read, guys. I'm not gonna lie. So it is. I was joking with Dr. Aaron offline that this is one of the most depressing things I've read in a long time, and I read books on genocide for fun. But really what it is a point by point examination of all of the forces that have made the millennial generation what it is. So you've heard Dr. Aaron and I talk about how every generation is a product of the cultures that it grew up in. It creates its own culture and then reacts to other cultures as well. So the cultures that baby boomers grew up in is different than the cultures that millennials grew up in, which is one of the issues in communicating them all together. And Malcolm Harris does a really, really good job in talking about that. So he starts with how school, from the beginning, school and things like how much homework we were given, to college not being either affordable or a guarantee of a good job, to being stuck in work situations that aren't really helpful, to some of the systems in place, things like the school to prison pipeline for children of color, the marginalization of Indigenous voices and Indigenous opportunities. And he just really goes through it. So like I said, really depressing and really okay, well, I'm not crazy. Everything's really hard. And I'm not the only one who thinks it's really hard. And that's really good. But he does finish with kind of his tips for how to really handle it. And he calls them the Bop It solutions, which is going to make sense to fellow millennials watching it. If you remember that commercial, that toy from the 90s, that was Bop It. He says all of his solutions are things that you could hit when you hit Bop It. So give it, protest it, vote it, buy it, etc. And a lot of his things are the stuff that a lot of people advocate for. Protest causes that are important to you. Make sure you are active in the political system and therefore vote. And if you are capable of running for office, do it. If you have the social capital in terms of the economy, and so don't buy things made by corporations, buy local, and spend money on Etsy for Christmas gifts instead of at Target, things like that. Although, as you will have heard in one of this week's Good Doctors Diagnose, Target is a great corporation to potentially support because of their support of people, of artisans of color. But we're all really upset with scared for the planet. He talks about why that is. If you are somebody, really, this is one of those books that it's really, really depressing. I'm not going to lie, but it is well researched. Here is where is a good, hi, I'm an academic nerd thing, but here is where the bibliography starts. So all of this is bibliography. He did his work, y'all. And he's got some reads, other things that you can consult. If you are somebody who is interested at all in the movement of humans, the evolution of human behavior, how these things are all working, I really recommend it. I certainly, even on things that chapters I already knew quite a lot about, you might be able to see, I've been quite high lady. One of my kind of favorite points that he makes that I would encourage all of us to think about is that generations, as he puts, and we talk about too, are made up things, but they are both really, really made up markers and completely real divisions. And so acknowledging that there's a bit of a give and take there is really important. Summary. Millennials are the first generation. We are the first generation to be less economically successful and have less economic opportunities than our parents in a couple of generations. The average millennial American has at least $50,000 in school loans, and usually around $15,000 to $20,000 in credit card loans. That's an average, and that's a lot to just kind of make it by. The average millennial will have 14 jobs in their lifetime, whether that's all in the same industry or not. Most of us started working the minute we were legally allowed to. We've been working ever since. A lot of us started hearing at ages 3, 4, and 5 about building a resume for college. We are exhausted, and we've been exhausted. The issue is the generations after us are just as tired, and we worry about them. We worry a lot. We're a super anxious generation. We took the reactions of the people just a little bit older than us, the folks that were maybe in high school when we were in middle school, especially those of us on the cusp of Generation X, and their very we don't care attitude, and we took it and decided to care too much. We care about everything. And there's a beauty to that, but the balance is getting lost. Older millennials tend to be very, very, very comfortable with gray areas, for instance. Younger millennials tend to be much more black and white, going into how Generation Z is. Ideas such as discourse are much more comfortable for people in upper millennial categories generally than younger millennial categories, things like that. And he goes into all of it. But if you're wondering why the avocado toast jokes make all of us so angry, this is a really good book to buy. And once you read it, bop it, once you read it, figure out some way to make active change about it. Whether that is, if you are somebody who has power in a company, think about doing some loan forgiveness schemes as part of a benefit. Potentially, there's a lot of companies that are helping with that, helping millennials pay off their student loans. And so, I mean, the reason that most of my friends will never own a house is their student loans. And so kind of what is that? What could the responsibility be to create more resources for people to be able to enter the economic market at a different level? If it all comes back to money, which we all know it always does, the problem probably isn't that we want 1 million of pieces of avocado toast and a lot of Starbucks. The problem is probably more deep-seated than that. Malcolm Harris does a great job of explaining why. We're in the middle of a 5-week chunk here talking about generations at Abbey Research, and so we'll keep going. Dr. Hinson's got another book review of a brand new book, because I should say this one's a couple years old. Some of the statistics are just a touch outdated. You know, if I'm reading a book that's 2 years old, it was probably written 4 years ago, so there's definitely some even newer research on top of this, and Dr. Hinson will be bringing that to us in our next book review. But this is considered to be the first major book on millennials written by a millennial. And for that fact, I felt seen, really depressed, but not alone. And that is really, really, really important. So yeah, recommend for everybody who works with humans, Kids These Days by Malcolm Harris. Bye.